The Guardian.
About 10 years ago, Opera, which is a Norwegian company that makes its own web browser, complained to the European Commission about Microsoft and the fact that Microsoft includes Internet Explorer, its own browser, bundled into Windows, that if you buy Windows, then you find Internet Explorer is already there, already set up. And they complained that this was anti-competitive. It's taken an enormously long time for the European Commission to grind this out, but it's finally determined. It had determined that it didn't like this, that it was anti-competitive, that it didn't create an open market for browsers. Nellie Kroes, who's the Commission's, the competition commissioner, said it was rather like going to a supermarket and finding there was only one brand of shampoo to buy. They've now got a decision which allows people who are using Windows XP, Vista or Windows 7 will be presented with what's called a ballot screen, which will show about a dozen different browsers that people can download and use instead of Internet Explorer.
So it's a real David versus Goliath moment here, with the little guys winning their battle. But what difference will it make to consumers?
Well, for consumers, it should mean that people will be using a different browser, and there are definitely benefits to that. A big problem in the early part of the 2000s was that Internet Explorer was the most dominant browser, and because there wasn't any real competition from other browsers, development on the web pretty much died. Internet Explorer just sat on it and killed it. And it was only really with the launch of Firefox, which is a free alternative browser, that things really started hotting up. People started developing things for it, things that really changed. You got things like Google Maps and so on. And that's made a big difference. So for consumers, they'll start to see more choice, which actually means you're more secure, because a lot of the sort of scams, a lot of the what are called drive-by downloads, which are security exploits against browsers, a lot of those are targeted at Internet Explorer. So you see more security, you'll get more choice, and actually it should mean that the web becomes something which is much more standards-based.
But it all goes back to Microsoft in the end. I mean, how damaging is this for them? Or will this not really make a dent?
It's not damaging in the sense that it's not taking money away from them directly, but it takes some of their control of what they were able to make people go to and where they were able to make people look at. It takes some of that away from them. And it means that they can't rely, at least in Europe, on being able to drive things on the web in the way that they want to simply by what they include in Internet Explorer. They now have to think rather differently about what it is that the web does and how they interact with the web, certainly in Europe.
For more great downloads, go to guardian.co.uk/audio.
With The Ethicist, I'm Randy Cohen. Letter number 1.
Some of my Facebook friends are medical students who post cell phone pictures of patients with what these friends believe to be comical maladies, with captions like, "A 5'9" Hispanic male walks into a bar," under a picture of a patient with a piece of rebar piercing his abdomen. The postings don't include faces or names, but still seem questionable. Doesn't this violate patient privacy? Name withheld, New York.
Were these soon-to-be doctors engaging in such gallows humor only among themselves, it might be a harmless way to cope with deeply disturbing situations. But although these med students rightly strive to disguise their human punchlines, patients, that is insufficient. It is essential that those photographed are not identifiable to others, of course, but it is also important that the patient does not recognize himself online. A doctor should not embarrass a patient or otherwise add to his discomfort, a likely outcome should the patient encounter such a posting. The chances of that happening increase as the injuries depicted grow more grotesque and less commonplace. How many 5'9" Hispanic males are impaled with reinforcing rod? It will not improve the doctor-patient relationship when that Facebook image goes viral and the latter learns that the former treats him like a cartoon. A doctor that I consulted acknowledges that battlefield humor can be a benign response to harrowing circumstances, but tells me in an email that, quote, public displays of such humor on the internet, along with photos that even if not identified, could be identifiable, is inappropriate and unprofessional, close quotes. There is a deeper problem. rather than simply giving doctors sufficient emotional distance to function effectively. This sort of horsing around might harden their hearts, making them less able to regard a patient as fully human. Such a transformation is not inevitable, but it is worth considering, particularly in a doctor's training. And that's what many med schools do, says the doctor I consulted. Quote, "At my own institution, our anatomy professor has paid great attention to this issue right from year one when students confront their cadavers in the gross anatomy lab with a series of well-conceived educational efforts." Close quotes. Letter number 2.
While visiting from out of state, my father-in-law generously paid for some expensive repairs to my car. After he put away his credit card, he asked if I would mind if he wrote this off as a business expense to his trucking company in another state. Flustered, I scolded him not to tell me if he was going to break the law. Should I have also made the shop refund his money and paid the bill myself? Name withheld, Oregon.
You are appropriately reluctant to participate in your father-in-law's little scam, but you're not in a position to demand much from the repair shop, probably not the removal of a charge from someone else's credit card. The person you must persuade to let you quit the gang and go straight is your father-in-law himself, assuming he wasn't just making one of those jokes. It isn't quite a joke. I concede that it can be awkward to challenge someone you hope will pass you the gravy at the next family dinner. Perhaps your spouse can gently intervene. It is disconcerting that you scolded your duplicitous in-law not for being dishonest, not for involving you in dishonesty, but for telling you what he was up to. You might strive for more than preserving your ignorance in a satisfyingly pristine state. This week's questions were read by Lynette Chang, whose unfettered opinions can be found at galfromdownunder.com. You can send your questions to ethicist@nytimes.com, where I'm so fed up with all this snow, I'm about to throw myself under a Norwegian, which, come to think of it, sounds pretty good.